In the first episode, one of the things I told you is you can look at this painting, but you won't be able to see it. And it might surprise you to know that I wasn't talking about the 3 signatures I've shown you, or the secret date that I found, or even the tiny name we looked at in the last episode. The things you can't see are far, far stranger than that. And in this episode, we're going to look at some of them. Welcome back to Vermeer's Child, where at long last we've finally arrived at the painting. And we can largely forget everything we've seen up until now and simply focus on the subject and the technique to see whether there's anything in this painting with the magic of a real Vermeer. This scene is what's called a genre painting, a terrible name which just means that it's a painting of everyday life. A woman at her door, presumably buying apples from a child, maybe a street vendor. Vermeer and de Hooch are best known for their genre paintings, although for Vermeer there are incredible outliers, such as his large landscape view of Delft, his portraits, a late religious allegory, an early brothel scene, and of course his 3 earliest surviving paintings are all history paintings. 2 of them have religious themes and one's a mythological scene. One of the 2 religious paintings in that group is Praxedis. While it's a much larger painting than my little painting, it has virtually the same proportions, and if the date I found on my painting of 1655 is to be believed, it has the same date. Vermeer's move to genre painting is thought to have happened after the mid-1650s, so it would seem that if my painting was painted by Vermeer, it would be his very first genre painting. But let's have a look at the painting itself. I've already pointed out that the perspective is all over the place, so this is an artist eyeballing the setup rather than being across the science of perspective. That at least is consistent with Vermeer's first known paintings where he avoids perspective. So what looks odd about the painting? Well, we know that Mr. Inskip has touched up the foreground on the left-hand side and perhaps a few other areas. We know there's some strange impasto lines across the woman's dress that make no sense, and we know the chair is different to the usual Vermeer chairs. It has an overstuffed upholstered seat, very large finials, and what appears to be a carved frame. But generally, the painting does fit the mould of other Vermeer genre paintings. It's lit from the left, it has a great sense of depth, and light plays a starring role. In fact, light seems to be the subject of the painting. The child's haloed in the threshold, the woman's dress is silhouetted, there's a strong use of colour, and complementary colours in particular. And despite the 2 main people being engaged in an activity, it's a passive activity. There's no movement. The woman is at an inflection point, neither bending forward nor backward. This stillness is a strong feature of Vermeer's paintings. We'll look at that chair in detail in the next episode, but today I want to look at the picture that's hanging on the right-hand wall. It measures 30 millimetres wide, or 1.2 inches, by 130 millimetres, or 5.1 inches high. So in this painting that's quite a lot of real estate, so it should have been easy to see what the picture is. One of the reasons I'm making this series is that it's imposed a discipline on me to come to a final view on things that I know about the painting and the things I don't. Until a couple of weeks ago I couldn't work out what was in the picture frame, despite looking at it for over 3 years. I could see that the frame itself was finely detailed and that in a few places the edge was catching some golden light. I could see that it was brown painted over golden yellow, but I couldn't find the inside edge of the frame. I expected that, as with most frames, there'd be an inside edge that was parallel to the outside, but that wasn't the case. So I then assumed that it might be a mirror frame, with the mirror set into a frame with a sinuous carved inside border. But the shapes seemed to keep on going, right across what I expected should be a painting, or, if it was a mirror, a reflection. The solution to this puzzle was actually to be found in the very odd chair below it, particularly in the area between the 2 large finials. The space between them is 10 millimetres, or a bit less than half an inch wide. When I first photographed this area, I used a lens that over-magnified it, which resulted in an image of a strange, intricate cell-like structure. But when I pulled the camera back to a slightly wider shot, I was greeted with a very vibrant sunburst of golden light. What had appeared as random light on the wall was actually quite a distinct shape that appeared to be part of the chair but logically wasn't. Why was there a sunburst of light between the finials? So I followed the light and shadows up the wall and realised that these shapes also had another meaning. They appeared to form a column and statuary of a temple, painted in intense, blinding golden light, and partly in dark grey shadow on the left, and perhaps also obscured in part on the right by what appears to be grey paint. If you look closely at its base, there's a silver metal object that is partly visible on the right side, either intersecting the right-hand finial or extending behind it. Whether this is the frame and apex of a canopy isn't clear, but the overall effect is to create something of an earthly throne. So could this be a genre painting that conceals a mythological story? The problem with trying to interpret this painting is that the artist has been all too successful in hiding this other story. He has painted objects that are very difficult to see, as he completely changes their colour as he moves from light to shade. And of course we also have the problem of scale that I mentioned in the last episode. Should we view objects closely, and if so, how closely? An example of this visual confusion is with the picture frame, where the temple shape continues right across the frame and into the picture, but it's almost impossible to detect. So that if you stand back at a normal viewing distance, all you'll see is the room with what appears to be a normal pattern of light from the window hitting the wall and the frame. But get close and allow your eyes to adjust, and you can see the column and the column extending over the frame and over towards the window. Partway up the golden column is what appears to be a winged statue. I haven't reached a firm landing on whether it's actually just an illusion. At times it's looked like a harpy, which is a mythological bird with the face of an old woman. How far this temple column shape extends towards the window is also unclear, but there are certainly similar shapes within those shadows right across to the window. So what then is the image in the picture frame? Well, even while I was filming this, I changed my view, because it's so hard to see, because it's a dark image on a hazy corner of the painting. I've decided it might be a bit easier if I just jump in and try and do a bit of a screen recording to show you what I think is going on in this picture frame. Just to clarify again, you can see some of these marks. This is a Nikon photograph, 36 megapixel photograph of the painting. You can see the hazy dirt all over it. But see how you've got these sort of marks, and there seems to be perhaps a bit of an edge there and perhaps a bit of an edge there. And then the marks change shape here. And as they go up again, they seem to weave in and out a bit. Now, it might be nothing more than just light on the wall, but it seems unusual that there's these marks, and there's similar marks right over on the left-hand side near the window, as if there's a piece of wood or something that's carved going down there. And you can actually see sort of some strange details in some of these marks. This is where you come down to that yellow object that looks a bit like a harpy. It doesn't look like a harpy when you're up close like this, but when you get further away, it certainly looks like something. Now, in the actual picture frame, you can see the light just catching the edge here of the wood. And there's actually an interesting object just under here, if you notice, and it looks a bit like a knife or something. But if we go up the picture a little bit, you start to see some shapes emerging. Now, just here, there's some fluting this way and that way, and you've got some horizontal lines. Now, I think these horizontal lines are steps, or the base of what appears to be, to me at least, to be a throne. And I think that's the left armrest, and that's the right armrest.
and we're facing outwards. I'm talking about when you're sitting down on it. I think this would be, your left hand would sit on top of here and your right hand would sit on top of here. And I think this is the seat base here. And if we just go back a little bit now, this armrest comes around like this and goes up here, and it goes up to a canopy that runs around the top of it and sits over the top of it. So I think what we're looking at here is a throne, and that's one armrest, that's the other armrest, and that's the seat, and I think these might be steps leading up to it, and I think you can see a bit of a leg there. So I think that this whole thing is some sort of a mythological throne sitting on or adjacent to some statuary of some sort, because it's impossibly dark, but just get a load of the detail. I mean, remember, this is only an inch and a bit wide in reality, so I don't know what size you're looking at it. Depends what screen size you're looking at it. You can work it out for yourself what the magnification is. But see the detailing that's in there on the armrest itself. It looks like it's been done with some sort of a little device that just drops a little dots of paint, and it's been built up from little dots. Although the larger areas have obviously been brushed in. And there's this strange texture all over it, as if a piece of material or fabric or something has been pushed into it, and the artist has used that in some way to help define the later shapes that he's made. I mean, I can't believe anyone would have painted these round circles, so I think they must have been made by pushing something into wet paint.
If my theory is correct, we have a chair with a strange golden sunburst, a temple of some mythical heaven, and an empty throne, a very strange combination. A while ago I asked you to guess which of these paintings has something that's also in my painting. What I was referring to was the background of St Praxedis, where Vermeer has painted columns of some temples and tombs. Unfortunately, the only image I can get of this painting is very low resolution, but there are hints of some details in those background shapes that bear at least some similarity to my little painting. The Vermeer St Praxedis, you will recall, was painted in 1655, which is the year I found on my painting, so at least I know Vermeer was looking at temples and tombs at that time. In the next episode, we'll look at the chair to see whether this strange combination of objects gets any clearer. Please remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, consider giving this video a thumbs up, and as always, thanks very much for watching.